Okay, it's connecting. Okay. Take it away.
Amazing. So we are live, right?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for joining us. So I'll just introduce myself. I'm Rob. I'm a developer advocate working here at HashiCorp, mainly focused on Vault, also known by DevOps Rob. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, it's DevOps_Rob. I have two very special guests here today. We're joined by Firon and we're joined by Jason from I think they're both from the Vault ecosystem team. Is that correct? Amazing. So these two gentlemen are some of the brains behind some of the better integrations we have behind Vault and Kubernetes. So really thrilled to have them here. We'll start with you, Firon. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Theron. Like Rob said, I'm a member of the Vault ecosystem team, and we handle a lot of the integrations between Vault and other platforms and systems. So yeah, I've been working a lot with Kubernetes stuff recently with Jason, and yeah, good to be here.
Amazing, thank you very much. And over to you, Jason.
Hi, I'm Jason O'Donnell, also on the Vault ecosystem team. Was the primary author for Vault Helm and Vault K8. I'm sure the two integrations that we currently offer for Kubernetes. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, Rob.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, so I mean, being as this is like a sort of a KubeCon special, I'm pretty sure there's going to be loads of people that are quite new to Kubernetes. So I guess my first question, which I'm going to open up to, is what's the story for the problem when it comes to secrets injection into pods for Kubernetes? Like, can someone sort of tell me the general kind of journey that someone may run into this kind of issue? So maybe we'll start with you, Jason.
Yeah, sure. So it's actually a really interesting problem within Kubernetes. So Kubernetes secrets tend to be static, and they need to be generated by an administrator. So I have already set up, say, a kube secret with a database password that my application needs in order to connect to a database. There's some problems with that, though. First of all, somebody had to set that up for me. It is static. You can change it. But you need to add extra mechanisms on top of your application to even detect those changes. It's like bounce your container. And secrets, we don't like, especially here in like HashiCorp with the Vault team, we don't like secrets to be, sitting out there for a long time unchanged. It's good to change your passwords regularly. So it's a unique opportunity for like Vault specifically to kind of take the kube secrets out of the picture and give you a way of consuming dynamic credentials that we generate on the fly that have leases attached to them so that they have an expiration point at some point. You can renew them if you're continuing to use them. If you don't use them, they kind of just go away in the background, which is really cool. The other thing too with kube secrets, so etcd by default, those secrets are stored in etcd. And if you're not using like an encrypted etcd backend, those secrets could be exposed in the actual storage layer. So having Vault could be running outside of Kubernetes even and storing those secrets, interacting with Kubernetes, kind of gives you a different way of encrypting and keeping those secrets safe out of the kube cluster.
Amazing, thank you. Just want to quickly throw it to Firon, just in case he has anything to add to that, even though that sounded very thorough.
No, that definitely covered most of it. Yeah, it's kind of interesting how Kubernetes secrets aren't actually all that secret. Right, it's just base64 encoding, and it won't come through a kubectl get, but it's still right there for anybody to see. So, I mean, and then if you can use something like Vault to manage your stuff, like that opens up just a huge world of possibilities to dynamic credentials and all that good stuff. So, yeah, we're excited to be able to make this possible for Kubernetes folks.
Amazing. So what are some of the kind of options you explored when you were sort of looking at this problem space and trying to implement something that works best for Kubernetes practitioners? What were the sort of thought processes that went into what we have today?
Yeah, so in terms of like designing these things, we have actually another secret injector project, the CSI driver, which is currently in alpha. It's kind of like I would even say pre-alpha. We're really just testing the technology, but there are very different approaches to how to consume and to retrieve secrets. So when we went into the injector, we really wanted like a cube way of doing things. So the mutating webhook injection is a really interesting way where we register a controller in Kubernetes. And when we get, say, pod events, either deletions or creations or updates of pods, we can kind of look at those and say, hey, does this user want to inject secrets? And what we do is then change your pod spec to have our containers, and then we automatically set up all that stuff for you, like the Vault configuration file. We point you to the Vault service. And using just the Kubernetes service account that you have already attached to your pod, we can uniquely authenticate you. So what this really boils down to, though, is that we're not impersonating you to get secrets for you. The sidecar container that we're adding is part of your pod and is uniquely authenticating to Vault through Kubernetes service account and getting secrets attached to your service account. So there's no like controller running in Kubernetes that's impersonating you and has elevated privileges and getting secrets on your behalf. So that really allows you to keep the communications with Vault with one-to-one, which is a more secure design. So the first step was a secure first-class integration, and those two kind of check the box for the secret injector. The next thing was we needed a way, so in using secrets alone is a very simple and happy path, but there's often a lot of things that go beyond just consuming the secret. For example, you might need to do things like make a Postgres connection string out of a username and password. You might actually need 2 secrets. So you kind of would need like this process that could combine those two, where you might have something like, converts a certificate to a different format. So we needed a way also to be able to run like commands or custom scripts, and even templatize some of these secrets so that you can consume the exact way that you want them. So console template actually was a perfect fit for that. And it was originally a standalone project, but we added it specifically to the Vault agent for this use case so that we could do the secret injection with a templating engine and a post-render command option to allow you to further process secrets. So that was really the second part of the design. And then the third design really was that we wanted a way to like signal your application or let you know when things change, and console template also fits that bill. So you can share like a process namespace with the other containers in your pod, specifically like an app container, and have like the sidecar agent send like a sig up signal to your application to let it know, hey, the secret has changed. You should reload your configuration if your application can actually handle that kind of logic. So those kind of 3 things, the secure one-to-one communication, the expressiveness of how you consume secrets, and then optionally running commands and being able to signal to your application that something has changed.
Amazing. Okay, so I have a bunch of questions just from listening to what you've just said. So I'm going to throw the first one to Firon. So let's just strip it back to basics. In terms of Kubernetes itself authenticating against Vault, what is the actual workflow? So if I'm a sort of beginner with Vault and I'm a beginner with Kubernetes and I've heard I'm going to run into this problem, what do I have to concern myself with in terms of authentication? How do I go about doing that?
Right. So it's basically revolves around service accounts in Kubernetes, right? So Vault, in order to set up Kubernetes authentication with Vault, you have to create a service account token that has token reviewing abilities, right? So you set that up in Vault. So when Vault gets a request from a pod with the pod service account, Vault can use the token reviewing ability to query the Kubernetes API and ask, hey, is this a valid service account token, all that good stuff. And then it boils down and then comes back, and then Vault kicks the secret back to the pod, to the Vault agent running on the other side. So I'd say that's pretty much the basics. I don't know if I covered all that, Jason, but yeah.
From the Vault side of things, I'm guessing you're using the Kubernetes authentication device. You would just configure that, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. I believe that's the only method we support right now, but yeah, it's all the Kubernetes auth method within Vault.
Uh-oh, you made a comment, now I'm going to put you on the spot. Are there plans to support any other auth devices, auth methods, should I say?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we'd love to make it as useful and flexible as possible. I believe that anything that's supported by the auto auth is a methods. You'll hear that term thrown around. That should be able to be possible in our setup, but basically, it's based on demand at this point and what gets prioritized. But,
have you heard much from the community in terms of other sort of authentication methods that they'd like? Is it sort of like JWT? Is that one of the ones that's on the list that people are asking for? Or?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if maybe Jason, you remember the specific ones we've heard recently.
Yeah, there's actually a PR for certificate authentication.
That's right.
So it's been open for a little bit while. Unfortunately, you can configure other auth methods today, but not through annotations. So you could, our secret injector allows you to mount a custom configuration file rather than us filling in all the blanks for you. So you could say use cert auth or app role or JWT. But out of the box right now, we just support Kubernetes, and we definitely, if you're interested in more authentication methods, we'd love to know. +1 on our GitHub repos, open discuss forums. Let us know what is good for you. Every time we add more authentication methods, though, there's more things that could go wrong. So we tend to move slow, and especially in the Kubernetes world, pretty much everything is service account driven within the Kubernetes cluster. So that just makes sense for the injector right now.
Yeah, I guess you have to take really great care when you're dealing with the authentication piece. It's something that if we get it wrong, the kind of ramifications of that can be quite huge. So I mean, me personally, as someone that's a big security enthusiast, I definitely appreciate taking the extra time to make sure that it is correct. And I'm pretty sure that that's kind of a shared sentiment in and around the community. Just on that, I just want to kind of plug something that Jason said. So we do have the discuss.hashicorp.com forum. So in general, that's the place where we would ask questions and engage with the community. So if you have any problems or you have any questions, that is the place to go. We're also quite active on GitHub as well. So if you have any sort of like feature requests, correct me if I'm wrong, if this is sort of maybe the wrong medium, but I would have thought with feature requests, you would just raise an issue there. And then obviously make sure you're sharing that around the community as well. So, I mean, personally, I'm on Twitter, so always reach out to me and I'll help plug that. And then we can see if we can get some upvotes or just more conversation around some of the things that you would like to see in terms of our Kubernetes and Vault integrations. Okay, so on that, I remember at the time, so this is before I joined HashiCorp, there was a lot of marketing and publicity around engaging the community to find out what integration between Vault and Kubernetes should look like to the practitioners. So I think there was a bunch of GitHub issues opened and the conversation kind of flowed from there. And we were encouraging a lot of people to get involved in that. I'm going to throw this question to the both of you. How much did you learn from that experience there, engaging with the community directly with something that's been such a, I'd say such a big problem for a long period of time? So we'll start with Firon.
Oh, sorry, I was getting pinged on Slack. Yeah, as far as community, I mean, we love to hear from the community because they're the folks that use our software and they make us as successful as as we can make them. So it's it's definitely a symbiotic relationship. We all of us regularly look through GitHub stuff to try to gauge where the demand is and stuff like that. So, and there's a lot of smart folks using our software, right? And they know how to use their use cases maybe aren't obvious to us since we're on the other side of the fence, sort of. They're down in the trenches using running their Kubernetes clusters, and we're writing software that they're hopefully going to run there. So all that to say that, yeah, community feedback is definitely very valuable, and we've gotten a lot of I think it's benefited both parties to be able to be open and have that sort of discussions in the open.
Definitely. And you, Jason, is there anything you want to add to kind of share some of your experiences with that process there?
Yeah, I'm always blown away by the creativity of the community. Things that I've never thought of, and that had turned into really cool feature, especially in like Vaultcades. So for example, we had early on in the project, I think one of the first issues opened was, I'd love a way, just all I want is this Vault agent sidecar to do is put a token somewhere so that I have this other container that is already Vault aware, and it can just do all the authentication for me and handle the renewals of that token and everything. And then I'll just use it. That's a perfect use case, and something that we didn't really think about up front. We were really focused on like the secrets that you're going to be consuming, but not necessarily like, what if you're already Vault aware? So that was really cool to see. Other things like using like once again like a Vault aware application. We just recently added support to the Vaultcades project where you can enable the caching mode of the Vault agent. And so Vault agent cache allows applications to talk to Vault via an agent proxy. So you set up the agent to talk to Vault. You can either configure it to that agent to use its own token or require a token. And you can also turn on caching. So what that allows your application to do is to consume the secrets in a very native way, talking to Vault, but not worry about the complexities of using Vault, like managing leases, managing token renewals, rendering new secrets. The Vault agent kind of does all that for you. So all you really need to do is just do a read against Vault and get your secret. And for your application's perspective, you're just talking to a localhost Vault, but it's actually proxying that request to a Vault server. And if your application is misbehaving, it maybe is just getting Vault secrets every like 10 seconds. That secret might be actually valid for a lot more than 10 seconds. And instead of just sending that request to Vault and putting pressure on the Vault server, you're just getting cache hits and then cache credentials back, which is really cool. We've actually seen it used in quite interesting use cases at scale. And it's significantly reduced traffic to like Vault servers. So yeah, like the community really drives the innovation. We set the project foundation, and everything post launch was most likely community feature requests or bug fixes or enhancements that the community has suggested.
I absolutely love that. I mean, knowing that you have a voice as a practitioner in the community, knowing that when you post an issue on GitHub, that people actually care about what you think and some of your frustrations. So, I mean, personally, as someone who still uses our tools and someone who wasn't working for HashiCorp before, I'd just like to say a thank you to the entire team for actually taking the time to listen to us and have empathy with some of the struggles that we have in our day-to-day complexities. On that, I have a bunch of questions, but there are some that are coming from the community. So to not be selfish, I'm going to start throwing some of these out. So the first one is around templating, which I think, Jason, you spoke about a little bit earlier on. So the question is, are templates with source to destination going to be possible soon? Currently, copying them from Vault/secrets on startup is counterintuitive and frustrating, especially during development cycles. I don't know. I'm going to throw this one to both of you. Maybe we'll hear from Firon because we heard from you last, Jason.
So yeah, that's an interesting question. I know we recently added another annotation directive that allows you to store the secrets in arbitrary locations, but that has to be matched up with the volume. I have an idea this is asking to not write the secret to the end memory volume, but to write it just to an arbitrary spot on the pod. So I'm not sure. What do you think about that, Jason?
Yeah, so we did recently add an annotation for specifying the file name and a path where that secret should be rendered. And if there is no volume mounted to that location, we'll mount a memory volume and share it between your container and the Vault agent container. So that should now be possible. But the caveat there is that it's an unreleased feature, and we're doing a Vault KH release this week, and that will go live by the end of the week. So obviously, we don't have all the context of this question. If this is not the
I have
feature
some more
for
context actually.
Okay.
Okay, so I didn't want to interrupt you, but
That's okay.
just as you said that, I thought, okay. So some more context has come through. So it says, in reference to the question above, I'm stuck using confd right now because all applications don't support flexibility in configuration location, i.e. environment files. So yeah, I suppose that kind of gives us a bit of a fuller picture. So with that new context, is there sort of anything you'd want to add to that response?
No, so yeah, like I've recently was able to populate a directory like Etsy, let's say Etsy Nginx, right? With secrets using the new annotations that we recently added. So that should be possible. Now the question about like supporting environment variables or not, that's a whole other thing we could talk and discuss if needed. But yeah, if this is not what you're thinking about as in terms of I need this feature, please open an issue in the Vault KH repo. We'd love to hear it, trying to understand the problem more if this doesn't solve that problem.
Definitely, and when you've done that, feel free to sort of reach out to me, and I'll definitely help get the conversation started with the wider community as well, because we do like to hear from everyone. Okay, cool. We have another question, which kind of goes back a little bit to what we were talking about with authentication earlier on. So the question is there a way to generate JWTs using a specific audience and subject? The use case would be for spiffy SVIDs.
I do believe we support that. So I'm not the I'll call them JOTs, the JSON Web Token expert on our team. I don't think Theron, you've worked on it very much, but I believe that is configurable in the Vault JOT auth method or the secret engine. Am I getting this confused? Not 100% sure on that. That might be something we need to follow up on. But if it's not in the Vault documentation, then it most likely isn't possible. And that would be I would open an issue in like the Vault core repo, because that would be where we would consume that.
Yeah, I'd say open up an issue regardless, because even if it does support it and then we find the documentation, I'll quite happily respond to that issue with the documentation there. And if not, then at least we're on the way to at least getting a conversation started around that. So yeah, if you come across it, let me know and I'll get to that. And yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so that's in terms of questions from the community. I'm sure more will flow in. But in the meantime, I guess I want to take the conversation more towards hosting Vault on Kubernetes itself. Now, so I come from a consultant background, and I pretty much had a career going from company to company, just installing and configuring Vault and just enabling their development teams to be productive in a more secure way. And the message back then was bare metal is the most secure way to host the Vault. It should be preferred to virtual machines, but virtual machines should be preferred to containers, right? So it's not outright saying you shouldn't run Vault in a container, but that was kind of a language that was used. And in my conversations with a lot of people from HashiCorp at the time, there wasn't really a lot of support for trying to run Vault inside a container. It felt like the attack surface was widening too much, right? But what I found is some companies who maybe the business value of the secrets that they were holding inside Vault were prepared to accept the increased risk to run it inside a container. And this kind of opens up the possibility for Kubernetes. So from your point of view, what's the story behind like how we came to have our own Helm chart? Because I think for me, it was quite funny to see the shift, and there's so many people now putting their Vault on something like Kubernetes as well. So what was kind of the process for that, and what are some of the considerations that you took into account when you were coming up with the Helm chart?
Yeah, the quote that life finds a way, I think is really relevant here. Just people were doing it, and you're right that there is this say stigma or historical context of Deploying Vault onto Kubernetes is not a good idea, because you're right, the attack surface is larger. Vault's sensitive, the sensitivity of a Vault is its memory, right? That's where the unencrypted secrets live for the lifecycle of the application, or the Vault server. So in Docker, where you share, you could be a multi-tenant Docker host in a Kubernetes worker node that has maybe a malicious container running on that and somehow escapes or gets access to the host's memory. That's definitely an attack vector for Vault. So to kind of ease some of those issues, we have two things. So Kubernetes has the affinity rules, which allow you to basically apply metadata to worker nodes. And in our case, the Vault Helm repo, you can apply an affinity rule that says, maybe you have a subset of worker nodes that only Vault servers are allowed to run on. So you set up the affinity rules in such a way that maybe these worker nodes are labeled for only Vault servers. Nothing else can be deployed there except for Vault servers. So you can really target where the Vault servers are running at any point in time to kind of mitigate some of those attack vectors. The other possibility too is, and that's kind of the cool thing about Vault, is it doesn't have to run in Kubernetes. It can run in bare metal. If the secrets are that important to you, you could integrate with GKE with a Vault server running on bare metal. As long as you have connection between the two, it's definitely possible. And that's really the cool thing there, is that security is a spectrum, and some people have more security considerations than others. And if that is the case, maybe running Vault on bare metal is the best case for you. Now, for Vault Helm, you'd mentioned like why Vault Helm. So there's a lot of, Vault requires a lot of setup, and there's a lot of considerations in installing and managing Vault. And there's a lot of things that we've learned along the way, just using the Helm chart about Vault, making it better for operators, adding features like the Kubernetes service registration, things that we probably wouldn't have really thought about if we hadn't had the Vault Helm repo. So we really aim to make it as easy as possible to configure and run Vault in Kubernetes. But also we had taken a very opinionated approach to how we think Vault should run, how we think it should be configured, so that we kind of are the experts about running Vault, and then you kind of just can interface with it, and you have a nice package or workflow to use it.
Okay, and with the Helm chart. So one thing I remember in my consultant days is one of the biggest challenges with deploying Vault on any platform was bootstrapping SSL, right? I've recently been in conversations with so many community members and just trying to get some feedback from them as to some of the points of friction that they have with Vault. And it turns out that some of the pain that I was feeling back then, people are still feeling today, right? Is this something that kind of came up in your Helm chart development? And did you find ways to kind of alleviate that? And I just sort of add the caveat here that I haven't actually deployed Vault on Kubernetes using the Helm chart. So I'm completely new and I'm here to learn from you both. So is that something that you've managed to try to tackle in the Helm chart? And if not, let's start a conversation around that, because it's a big one for the community, I think.
So I would give this one to Theron, but this is my wheelhouse, something I've been working on a lot lately. I can't give any specifics about any upcoming features, but we hear you. This is definitely something that we can make easier, and there are things in the works that will alleviate some of this pain for sure.
Amazing. Yeah, so anyone that had any doubts that whether we listen to you or not, I guarantee you we are hearing. Okay, so in terms of the Helm chart as well, how flexible is it? So if you want to configure your Vault in a certain way, if you want to use something like auto unseal with a particular cloud vendor, or I don't know, you just want any kind of specific configuration inside that, how flexible is the Helm chart? How easy is it to get your Vault your way using that Helm chart?
Yeah, hopefully it's easy. That's our goal for sure. So as far as things like auto unseal, like if you're on AWS, like usually in order to get like credentials something injected into the pod from AWS, so you can use those. You have to set certain annotations, like on the service account or something like that, and we support that within the Helm chart to be able to add specific annotations. Those also come in handy for things like setting up ingress on like GKE and things like that. So lots of annotations everywhere. You can set environment variables if you want to just plop your creds in that way. We've also been recently we've been actually squashing a few bugs around being able to associate an IAM role with a Kubernetes service account in EKS. And again, to do that, you just annotate your service account, and then you'll be able to get the creds, and then Vault auto unseal will find those creds and fetch the right things, and then auto unseal for you. And that whole process is actually working pretty smoothly right now. We're trying to add some more logging at the moment to help folks debugging, but and of course we have other configuration options as far as HA and or different backends and stuff like that you can use, console or raft or whatever.
Amazing. I just want to plug something that a colleague of mine has just pointed out. So big shouts out to Taylor. He's one of our developer advocates. He primarily focuses on Terraform, but he does have a huge Kubernetes background. So what Taylor is saying is that we've recently released a Learn guide for deploying Vault on Kubernetes. So you can find that at the learn.hashicorp.com website, and I think there'll be a tutorial inside there. So that's really amazing. Also, Jason wants to talk a little bit about OpenShift, so I'm going to give the floor to you on that one there.
Yeah, so we recently released support for OpenShift. So you can now deploy Vault onto OpenShift without, in the Helm chart, really just one additional flag kind of flips all the bits to make sure that it's OpenShift compliant. But we've, especially the injector and Vault itself, both have been worked in a way that they're now OpenShift compliant, which before you needed to adjust some things like security context rules to get Vault to run properly. But we've kind of made that, removed all those, that friction point, and we've now made Vault much easier to deploy if you're using our Helm chart.
Amazing. So in terms of running Vault on a container, I'm just going to kind of relate this back to the whole being on-prem versus going to the cloud. So normally when you're on-prem, you have a particular mindset. You have very fixed firewall perimeters. You can control your security. Your cost is controlled. Everything is just very predictable, right? When you move to the cloud, things are a lot more elastic. You can't predict IP addresses, for example. You now don't own the firewall infrastructure. That's now someone else's responsibility. So it's a shift in mindset when we talk about going from on-prem to the cloud. If we're talking about hosting Vault on bare metal and maybe even in a VM versus a container, is there any kind of shift in mindset that people need to kind of be aware of? And the second question I have to follow up to that is, what are some of the best practices for running Vault inside a container that people should be aware of?
So I'll take a stab at this first. So I'd say, as far as running in containers versus bare metal, I'd say probably the first thing that comes to mind is, containers seem to be a little more volatile, right? They can disappear, they can, crash and go up and down and roll deployments and things like that. So that's where something like clustering or an HA setup really becomes necessary. I mean, I'd argue that's probably necessary no matter where you're using Vault, but having a robust setup like that and proper monitoring to be able to know what's going on and what the state of your Vault cluster is I would say that's probably key. But I think Jason probably has more answers on this topic.
Yeah, it's a really cool question. So one thing to consider, like bare metal versus containers, and you're absolutely right, Rob, saying that it's much more elastic, is the storage available. So imagine, your Vault cluster gets rescheduled to a different host within a region. Is the storage that was attached to have, like, maybe it's a raft Vault cluster, is it able to access that data? Because that's important to Vault, right? It's essentially a database at the end of the day, and if it doesn't have access to the data, then there's issues. So you need to really consider specifically in like the cloud versus bare metal, how your storage can move around and react. Can I mount this volume to this host if I were to lose this, say, data center or something? In bare metal, it's a little less of a problem, because really you're most likely, with running in a data center, you don't really maybe fail over that often, or if you do, you're using something like Vault Enterprise to replicate data, maybe to like East Coast versus West Coast, United States, and then the storage is not actually moving. You're really just you're sending the bits over the pipe and it's replicated. So that would be like the big gotcha, I think. The other thing too, on bare metal, you see servers a lot with swap enabled. If Vault memory is swapped to disk, there could be an exposure of secrets because its volume, its memory is sensitive. In Kubernetes, that's kind of not really an issue though, because kubelet requires the swap to be disabled. So things like mlocking, enabling mlock in like containers, specifically kube. So in Docker, you can have swap in some cases, but in Kubernetes, swap is explicitly denied. So things like swapping the disk secrets by accident are less of an issue on containers versus, or in Kubernetes versus bare metal. The other thing I want to say too is it's a plug for console in the service mesh. It doesn't matter where Vault is running. It doesn't matter where your database is running. If you have a nice service mesh setup, all that stuff is just connected. It can be a hybrid of Kubernetes and data centers and bare metal and all these different things. But in the service mesh perspective, it's all a unified service layer. So things like you talked about firewall rules and setting up communications between, all that stuff is kind of is really console's wheelhouse, and that's kind of where our products really can benefit off one another. And they set up the connectivity, and we set up the secret engine, and you kind of get best of both worlds using those.
Amazing. So you talked a little bit about making sure that the storage is made available to the Vault container should it be rescheduled to maybe a different node. I guess that the way around that would be something like persistent volume claims, or is there a different sort of mechanism that you would recommend for that?
So the PVCs are Kube's way of basically mapping ownership to a specific slice of volume or storage. But it gets even lower level than that. It really depends on what storage you're abstracting. So for example, a PVC could describe NFS, network file storage, which can be mounted to any host as long as it has network connectivity to whatever the main NFS, wherever it's running. But things like EC2 block storage, I don't remember the name of AWS's volumes, they can only be mounted to a single host or a single, what are they called? Not region.
Availability zone.
Availability zone.
Availability zone, yeah. They can only be mounted to a single availability zone at any given time. It even gets weirder too, because like GKE or Google Cloud Platform has, I believe, regional persistent disks as well. So those can move to anywhere within the region. So it really depends on the storage that you're interfacing with. And that's some of the harder stuff, specifically when you're talking about cloud volumes, because if you're using a raft, the performance of the underlying storage is really important. Yeah, so kind of not a great answer, but it's a complicated issue, and it's definitely something you have to consider when you're running in Vault and Kubernetes.
Okay, amazing. Okay, just quickly before we continue, I just want to say we're moving into the last 15 minutes of this session. So please make sure if you have any questions, you do post them in the chat. I will do my absolute best to ask Firon and Jason to answer them for you. yeah, this is a huge opportunity. Like I say, you have two of the main architects behind this integration between Vault and Kubernetes. So I can't think of a better opportunity to actually be heard than to post your questions and give me the chance to ask them so I can answer it live on there with them. Okay, so staying on the storage kind of theme, one of the things that I've picked up from the community of late is the whole backup restore story, especially now we're talking about Raft integrated storage, right? So in terms of, so I come from mainly a console kind of background as a storage backend. So backup and restore was very well documented. It's very simple to do. In terms of doing that with Raft integrated storage, on top of the fact that now everything is in a container, and now we're looking at storage, which has to be kind of mounted to different places as we have container scheduling going on. What is the story from your perspective around that? Is there sort of any shift in approach that you would recommend for that, or is it just business as usual?
Aaron, do you want me to take this, or do you want to take it?
Go ahead. I'm not totally familiar with backup and restore with Raft, so.
Okay. Yeah, so just like console, we support snapshotting Raft clusters. So there's a Vault operator Raft snapshot command that allows you to create snapshots, restore from snapshots. So that's kind of the interface that you would use. Currently, today, we don't have maybe a scheduled job that does that. It's something you'd have to configure yourself. But it's absolutely possible. And on top of that too, you can do block level storage snapshots as well of the Vault cluster to get an additional, backup or retention of your Vault cluster. So in terms of like documentation, everything, there is some documentation in the works currently, and some features around backup and restore for operators. And the Raft is relatively new to Vault. It launched in 1.4, officially went GA. So we're definitely playing some catch up, but the right components are there. The tools are there. We need to do a little bit more in terms of visibility of using those and the end to end. What operators are going to need to do this. And I'm not sure if the deployment guide that you plugged earlier has it, but I believe it does use the Raft storage, and that could be a great addition to that guide if it's not already there.
Amazing. I'll make a note of that. So that's it from the kind of storage backend layer. That makes perfect sense. We have the mechanism built in to take those backups. But what I found a lot of people doing away from containers is they then do periodic disk backups. So the disk would contain sort of the console snapshots, or in this case, it would be the Raft snapshots. Is the mentality still the same? And just going off a conversation I had with one of the Vault engineering managers recently, I guess this is a good chance to talk about what are the kind of failure scenarios that people should be trying to protect against. Now, I understand that every organization is different, and what they see as a threat is going to be different to the next organization. But in general, and maybe this is more of a personal opinion, what are the kind of failure scenarios that we should be trying to protect against?
Yeah, so any loss of data can be an issue, and we want to minimize that as much as possible. So I believe this is even true for console. For an absolutely consistent snapshot of, say, Vault or console, the console server or the Vault server need to be shut down. So that means Vault has checked everything into storage. It is, it's not residing, and nothing is residing in memory anymore. It's all been flushed. And when you take that snapshot, it is now a consistent backup. That being said, Vault is designed in such a way that it minimizes absolutely till as necessary the amount of stuff that isn't written to disk immediately. So the way that our data structures are not very complex, so they typically just flow right to disk. So that's really the biggest failure scenario I think I can think of off the top of my head is you might not get everything, but if you don't get everything, the loss will be very minimal. And then we also offer, Vault Enterprise with replication on top of that for disaster recovery clusters. So you can replicate your data to other data centers, other Vault clusters that are, secondary to the active cluster. So if these are concerns of yours, we do have some tools or at least some workflows that will help some of that.
Amazing. So I'm going to throw this one to Firon, and it kind of is still on the kind of storage theme in a way. It's to do with Vault's audit devices. Now, in my consultancy days, one of my first issues I experienced with Vault was I enabled an audit device using I think it was file storage, right? And everything was working. I was very happy. And then one day I get a call to say that Vault's not working. I'm like, hey, what's going on here? Turns out what had happened is the disk had just gotten full. So it had been writing logs to the disk, and so much time had passed. And what I discovered is that essentially, if the audit device cannot write to whatever the endpoint is, so in this case it was a file, then Vault will cease all operations, right? It's a security sort of safety mechanism. So one of my kind of best practice tips is enable 2 audit devices, right? I tend to recommend file because it feels like the most stable. I tend to say that do 2 audit devices, both to file, but the files should be on different volumes, right? So you have sort of different disks. That kind of gives you some kind of separation of concerns. In terms of running Vault on Kubernetes, maybe not Kubernetes specifically, but just in a container where you're going to have to mount storage, are there any kind of best practice kind of tips or guides, or would you take the same approach? Like, what are your thoughts on this kind of thing? Because it's the kind of situation where if you don't understand the implications of audit devices, just like I ran into this problem, then you end up having an outage. And lucky for me, it was during the day, but it could easily have been during the night.
Yeah, so first caveat, I haven't messed with the audit system much with Vault, but I can take a stab at this one. Yeah, that was the first thing that came to my mind when you were starting this question, is definitely have redundant audit devices or paths set up, because of just the problem you mentioned, right? You run out of file space and then you're blind. As far as running it in Kubernetes, I mean, you can set up volumes or persistent disks, or I would say it might even be smarter to use some sort of an external logging service that you could hook into as well. And maybe so you don't have to manage your own storage and volumes and things like that. Yeah, sorry, that's about all I got on as far as audit devices.
I'll throw it to Jason, but before I do, you did raise an interesting point, which is a bit of a shift in mindset for me, right? So in the virtual machine world, or even the bare metal world, the workflow that I always used to have was it would write to disk, and then you would have something like, for example, if you had Splunk, you would have like a Splunk exporter kind of service running outside that, and that would read the disk, and it would pretty much stream the data to your Splunk setup, and whatever you were doing with Splunk, it would just go ahead and process those logs and so on and so forth. Now we're in the container world. What's different? Like, how do we implement that same workflow, right? And I'm not really someone that operates containers at scale like that. So Kubernetes is not something I really get my hands dirty with too often. And I'm sure there's loads of people listening out there that are probably in the same position that are here to learn. So I'm going to throw it to Jason. So same original question, but kind of with that caveat that Firon has kind of thrown in my head. What do you say to that?
Yeah, so great questions. So in the Vault Help project, we have an audit storage stanza within the server configurations. And what that allows us to do is using a storage class, we'll automatically get you some volume of requested size of your choosing. We'll mount that to the Vault pod. And then you can write in the Vault configuration file to use that storage that we've already set up for you. In terms of like imagine you maybe, you're right, having 2 mount points is good. Writing to both locations is great. We have the extra, we recently changed our volume configurations. I think it's just called volumes now. And we're deprecating the old one, which was called extra volumes, where we're not going to make the disk for you using like storage classes. But if you can give us the name of some storage that you want us to mount to the Vault pod, we'll do that for you. So that's a way of you configuring, like, I have this extra volume, maybe it's a terabyte, and it's maybe enhanced for writes and not reads or something. We'll mount that for you, and then through the Vault configuration file, you just point to it and it writes logs there. Great. So in terms of shipping logs, you're right. We also have a different configuration. It's along the same lines where we'll mount extra containers into the pod. I'm sorry, not mount. We'll add extra container into the pod. So if you had something like where the the elk stack one,
what's it called, file beat,
like
or something
file
like
beat.
Yeah, file beat. So like imagine you had a file beat container. In the extra containers configuration in Vault Helm, you could define that container and mount the audit storage that we've mounted for you to that container, and it just reads that container and ships it off to maybe Elasticsearch or something. So that is absolutely configurable. But that's kind of the hard part about Vault Helm, though, is that we give you lots of places to configure these things, because the use cases this is kind of the big thing in Kubernetes. It's a toolbox, and we give you the tools, but we can't document every single use case. So you kind of have to be clever with some of these things, but we give you lots of ways of just defining, like, pure Kubernetes, like, here is a container definition that I want to add to my pod, and you do what you want with that. Configure it the way you want. It makes sense for your environment. It does require a little bit of Kube know-how, because we can't predict all of these things for you, but we can at least give you the tools so that you can do it.
Amazing. We only have a few minutes left. So I always like this question because it gets people excited, but it kind of throws the both of you on the spot. What's next? What is next for integration between Vault and Kubernetes, and even just running Vault on Kubernetes?
It's a big question. We have a lot of ideas. There are some things that are currently in the works. So like I said earlier, I plugged at the beginning of the chat, we're taking a look at the CSI technology. We have a public repo with like a pre-alpha, alpha, just bare bones implementation, just us, really trying the technology. We have a learn guide if you want to go out and give it a shot. It's a different way of consuming secrets, but it's a very promising technology, and that's through a partnership with Microsoft. So that's a cool project, and that's definitely going to see some iteration in the near future. In terms of beyond, maybe like this next quarter, I can't disclose too many things, but Cube is a big initiative here at HashiCorp. We are constantly thinking about how to fit Vault into Kubernetes and make it better. We've been, like you said earlier, we have that GitHub issue. There's lots of good ideas. Those ideas didn't just sit in that repo. They're in our backlog. They're being researched. There's smart people thinking about these things and trying to understand, what the HashiCorp solution would look like and feel like. So lots of cool stuff coming, definitely. Can't disclose too much though. So you're gonna have to stay tuned.
Amazing. Well, I'm personally excited. Okay, we have 2 minutes left. So I'm just going to throw it to the both of you. So we'll start with Firon. Just any final words, departing thoughts, or anything you want to share with the community, even if it's just a thank you, whatever it is. It's your last chance, I guess.
Yeah, big thanks for all the interest and all the involvement we've had so far. And yeah, we'll do our best to keep it up for sure. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. And Jason?
Yeah, big shout out to the community. They've taken our projects in ways I've never thought possible. They've given me lots of tricks up my sleeve. So they've made me successful, and I hope we're making them successful. So thanks a lot to everybody who contributes to our projects, who opens issues, files bug reports, It all makes the software better, and hopefully it makes Kubernetes better as well. And on top of that, I want to say I absolutely love Kubernetes. I think Theron can you know, confirm that I absolutely love Kubernetes. I find it to be fascinating. It's a really powerful tool to wield entire regions or data centers of infrastructure with just YAML. It just really enjoy it. So happy to be part of KubeCon, and happy to see Kubernetes being successful like it is.
Amazing. And I guess my final thoughts are, I think I'll just echo the same things that Theron and Jason have said. We absolutely appreciate everything that the community does for us. When I say us includes you as well. Your problems are our problems. We try to have empathy with some of your frustrations. And like Jason says, when you do file a GitHub issue, they don't just sit there, just kind of being ignored. Even if it looks like there's not much activity on there, there's definitely a lot of work that's going on in the background to kind of research the problem itself and think about what the solution could look like to benefit the wider community as well. So definitely keep bringing up your feature requests, keep raising issues. Hang out on discuss.hashicorp.com. If you have any questions there, ask them there. But just come and hang out as well, because there'll be people that have questions on there that you are equipped to answer. And sometimes even we at HashiCorp aren't equipped to answer the questions because we're making the software. We're not actually in the use cases. So maybe you have practical real life experiences that can help the next person in the community. So definitely encourage you to hang out there. You'll definitely see me there. And on that basis, I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us. We love and appreciate you, and we will see you next time. And I hope you enjoy KubeCon. Thank you.